This is Twit.
Apple is in talks with Comcast once again, but this time not about employees, this time about a streaming service. We'd heard before the Comcast-Time Warner merger that Apple was talking to Time Warner. So is this just continued talks?
Same story.
Seems to me that they said, well, no, you need to talk to this guy now. So
yeah, we got a new guy.
Right.
New guy in town, although I don't think that merger's happened yet. So
no, but they could probably see the writing on the wall.
They're being proactive.
It's smart. I mean, TiVo's got a deal with Comcast that gives TiVo boxes on Comcast network access to all of the Comcast On Demand stuff. So I think, you know, Comcast makes a lot of money selling internet services. Having it go through Apple, if that's a premium add-on like TiVo is, Comcast has shown in the past that they're happy. Like, look, you don't want our crappy box. You want to pay more for TiVo. That's fine. We'll give you all our stuff on TiVo too.
So the Apple TV would become a Comcast, like HBO Go, would become a Comcast on-demand service, or would have a Comcast app?
I would. Well, so Comcast service, I just switched about 6 months ago to Comcast. Got one of the new TiVos, so I got to discover all of this. Comcast has on demand. They've got a bunch of live TV channels that stream on their app or on the web.
Right.
So if you're a Comcast subscriber, you can stream those. So you roll all of the stuff that they're bundling that's live and all the stuff that they're bundling that's on demand.
You get the Streamcast too, which is their streaming, like their Netflix competitor, I think.
I don't know. I haven't looked into that one.
Okay.
That may not be on the TiVo.
It's interesting.
But it's like,
Comcast is really becoming,
so they've got
as
content,
you said, this
and
net forward.
Well, and they
company.
own NBC on top of that, right? So you could imagine bundling all of that Comcast stuff together for Comcast customers under an Apple TV channel, even of Comcast, and have access to all the on-demand and all of the streaming live channels that they've got.
But can I get Channel 4? Can I get Channel 5? That would be the question. Because then I wouldn't need...
I bet you could get Channel 11 because they own that.
Yeah.
But
that's a big question.
NBC I could get, but not
It would be an interesting idea, and it would be fascinating to me if Comcast said, you know, we have such strength in internet that we're going to go over the top, which is what they call it when you take the cable box out of the equation, and say we're going to put every channel we can live and recorded on the internet for our subscribers.
Yeah, you still have to have a cable account and a Comcast,
but maybe you don't need a TV account anymore or something. I don't know.
Apple, in fact, I think I've mentioned this before. We were talking about the Netflix Comcast brouhaha, and there's a lot more in that, and we will talk about that at some point. But one of the things we learned at the time was that the best way to watch Netflix is on an Apple TV because they host it. They have their own CDN. Apple, of course, concerned about quality, says, you know what, we're not going to trust the public internet to bring you Netflix. We're going to do it ourselves. They've consistently had the best quality Netflix. So imagine if they do this with Comcast.
Absolutely. But the thing is, there's a couple challenges with this. One is that no one really knows what's happening yet. There's some rumors that they're going to actually build the Comcast box and sell it. So you'd be able to get an Apple version of the Comcast box. Some are that it would be an app and it would go on your iOS device or on your Apple TV.
Right.
But there's questions about whether they have the rights to the programming. Can Comcast just give them the rights that they have, or do they need separate agreements? And another thing, and this again goes all the way back to Steve Jobs at All Things Digital, they had a deal with AT&T, which at least covered the country. This, they're going to have to go region by region in America to get the deals just to roll it out. Then they're going to have to, you know, talk to Canadian cable companies, talk to Lithuanian cable companies. It's an incredibly arduous go-to-market strategy. And I think the rumors heating up just show how difficult it is for Apple. And maybe originally they just wanted to make their own TV deals and get their own subscription service. But the cable companies make the cell companies look like the happiest, most go-luckiest companies in the world.
So my theory is that because Comcast is, pending this Time Warner merger, just gigantic and covers a huge amount of the U.S., that one way you might approach this is to say, we're going to build it with Comcast. That's going to show how it's done. It's going to be an Apple TV app. The other cable companies will give them our developers kit. They can make channels that do the same thing using, be like Comcast, do it like that. And that might be the only way they can go forward, is to find the biggest name, make a deal with them, and use that as the example. Because otherwise, you're right, it would take, there would be dozens, if not hundreds, of different negotiations they have to do.
That's the beauty of Comcast. It's massive.
It's, yes.
You only have to make a deal with one person. They got everybody.
Yeah. But this is why my main problem with these stories, and we've been following these for a couple of years now, is that sometimes it feels as though Apple's working really, really hard on a BlackBerry-style phone, where it could be the most beautiful thing ever, the most wonderful thing ever. That doesn't change the fact that people are moving away from phones with mechanical keyboards that run the way a BlackBerry does. in my imagination, and I stress the word imagination, I imagine Apple saying that why do we want to encourage people to get all of their content from cable companies forever? If we're really going to invest in the next 5 or 10 years, let's create a way. If we're going to burn so many lawyers into mortal combat against each other to make these deals happen, let's make it easier for cable channels individually to produce content for Apple TV, and they'd still have to go through a sign-in through the cable company to prove that they've actually created
that's what we've got now.
that they have access to it. Well, but they could improve that too, and therefore then they don't have to make any deals with any cable companies. They can create an API that every single channel will love to use, and will make it so easy, and they'll give these companies so much help that maybe you will stop using your cable box to access because these apps will run it that much better.
Well, you understand why Comcast wants this, because they do see the train coming down the tunnel, Adam, and so this is a way to kind of make that transition to, as you said, an over-the-top network, internet-based system.
And it could be as simple as adding something like an accounts setting where you log in.
Here's what
Comcast,
the journal says. This is what the journal says. Apple and Comcast aren't close to an agreement. In fact, I saw a great conversation on TNT a couple of days ago, I think, or maybe it was Monday. Mike Elgin had a guy from Variety and a guy from Ars Technica. So you had the technical side and the Hollywood side, and both agreed this is never going to happen. Apple and Comcast aren't close to an agreement, according to the journal. Delivering the service quality Apple envisions would require Comcast to make significant investments in network equipment and other back-office technology. According to people familiar with Comcast thinking, the companies also differ on how deep a relationship Apple should have with Comcast customers, because Apple wants users to sign on to the new device with Apple logins. They want to control customer data. Of course, Apple does, right? Yeah. They also asked for a cut of the monthly subscription fees paid by customers.
This also sounds like somebody's negotiating in the press.
Because these are Wall Street Journal's got people from Apple and from Comcast side. They're in this article. Comcast says unnamed sources wants to retain significant control over the relationship with customers and the data. Of course, they both do. Furthermore, Apple, and this is the trick that you mentioned, must acquire significant TV programming rights from media companies. It's not just Comcast. And Comcast would want to ensure the price Apple has to pay to acquire those rights wouldn't cause the service to be priced higher than traditional pay TV. It's got to be less or the same.
It's a bag of hurts.
Yeah, that's why I think the most likely thing that'll happen is an agreement where you'll have to be a TV customer of Comcast. You can't cut your TV.
That's exactly
And then it'll be like HBO Go or something like that, where you'll have access to the on-demand and the streaming channels, but it won't be a cord-cutting kind of thing, because that's going to be that much more complicated.
Now, if they do that and they have an SDK for games, it could maybe be interesting enough that people will be willing to swallow the login stuff.
Maybe.
But there's so many ways you can make the login stuff so much easier and so much faster. And I would see Apple fixing that as part of the solution to the problem.
Well, for me, it's not logging into the cable companies. It's having to have anything to do with the cable company.
Exactly.
Like, I would love an Apple version of Netflix where Apple just had the rights to the content and they could do it. But there's so many, like Jason said, Comcast owns NBC. They also own the internet pipes. And do we get into an agreement? Apple can buy a lot of infrastructure, but do they have to start paying Comcast the way that Netflix is now having to pay some companies? There's so many hurdles that these companies can put in Apple's way from them just delivering a direct-to-consumer product.